I have 7:30, so I will call the meeting to order. And if Susan, you can vote for Leo tonight. First up is Wentworth Ave.
Good evening. Jason Lopez, Keach Nordstrom Associates, here for 42 Wentworth Ave. Owner is Yelsu LLC. The proposal is to construct a 24,000 square foot warehouse for storage of textile products manufactured by a company here in Londonderry. They're TCI, located over on Bouchard Street. Little history with the lot first. This lot was created as part of the ecological industrial park back in 2000. And there was a site plan for a 61,200 square foot warehouse approved back in 2001. Site work was started. They actually used the property for laydown area for the power company out behind Stonyfield Farms. 2007, there was a letter issued by Tim Thompson for vesting of the site plan. Part of that vesting process required that it needed to maintain construction exactly as approved. Well, that plan had a site-specific permit. In 2009, that program was replaced with alteration of terrain, and the stormwater ponds do not comply with the current alteration of terrain requirements. So, therefore, we need to move forward with a new design that will comply with the AOT requirements. An important part of that is the town adopted the Conservation Overlay District in 2001 after the approval of the prior site plan. So 2 of the detention ponds were actually installed as part of that initial construction process and leveling the pad area out. And a lot of the buffer area around the perimeter of the field actually creeps into what is today's CO district. So much of that work that was completed was in compliance with zoning at the time in 2001 and was vested, but now we're going to be working the best we can within that envelope of clearing. Property is 13.7 acres and includes about 2.6 acres of wetlands. The proposal does not include any impact to wetlands, but does have proposed impacts in the CO buffer. Wetlands were flagged by Chris Danforth, and site-specific soil mapping was completed by Lou Curley. Wetland flags were survey located, and we made determination of the 50-foot CO buffer. Currently, the plan is with the planning board and under design review. We haven't obtained any comments yet, so that CO buffer and that determination will be reviewed by the building and code enforcement officer as part of that review process. We have some areas that are less than the half acre, so the wetland buffers do not apply to those areas. Along with the wetland mapping, we filed for review by New Hampshire Natural Heritage Bureau, and we had the usual list of critters in that area: snakes, turtles, New England cottontail rabbit. And if determined applicable during the review process, we will comply with the mitigation agreement relating to the New England cottontail rabbits in that area, similar to what we did with the DEA facility just down the street. Currently, GZA is working through the review process with New Hampshire Fish and Game. They've issued some minor comments, and GZA will address those. A lot of the biggest item now that remains is a lot of the photos that were taken were during the winter with snow cover. Fish and Game wants photos with no snow cover. Other than that, they needed a full plan set. I provided that, and there was one other minor item. I don't recall what it was at this moment. So I think we'll be in good shape with New Hampshire Fish and Game. So design-wise, the proposal includes a sewer connection, municipal water connection, underground utilities. There's a closed drainage system connecting to subsurface chamber system out behind the building, and 2 stormwater ponds. There's also 16 parking spaces, 2 loading bays. Can you advance to site plan? Maybe page 4? There you go. So there's the layout of the site.
Yep. Keep going.
Stops.
Oh, are you on the right?
Oh,
Right
no,
there.
okay, it's just, sorry, it's computer.
So, you know, this is the layout of the site. Off, as you're looking at that plan, off to the right, lower, about where the title block is, that's where the cul-de-sac for Wentworth Ave is. You know, this is gonna set back, it's behind, I don't know if anyone's familiar with the site, but it's actually on the other side of the power line utility. There's a wetland corridor that kind of runs down along and parallel to that power line easement. All those trees will stay within the wetlands and within that buffer, those trees that remain. So much of the project is not going to be visible from the public road. There is a common driveway that runs from the cul-de-sac out to that power plant. That is secondary, I think, emergency access for that other property. This is going to be just a warehouse, storage of their product that they make. Large shipments will come out, so we've got to get a tractor trailer in and around this building and up to the loading docks in the back. So with that layout, as we come in, again, on the right side of that drawing, the east side, we've got a bit of a radius of that driveway coming off the existing paved way. We're doing that for the turning radius of tractor-trailer trucks. That area will be within the CO buffer, but it's also in the area under the power line easements. So I think just recently, or maybe it was last fall, I say recently, the power line company went out there and clear cut under their line, got all the brush and trees and stuff out. So, you know, yes, we're into that CO buffer a little bit for that radius, but it's also within an area that's under easement for maintenance, clearing, and so forth. The other area that we're looking to impact is in the northwest corner of the property, so on the page, the upper left corner. There is an existing detention pond out there today. We are looking to expand that pond in order to meet storage requirements for treatment, for alteration of terrain, and then the town has a requirement for 1 foot of freeboard in the design storm. So we needed to make that pond a little bigger, so there would be additional impact in that area. And then on the southwest corner of the back parking area, there's a bold line wrapping around the parking. That's a retaining wall. There's going to be a little bit of fill at the toe of that slope that will just creep into the CO buffer. You know, for economy, we wanted to do a 3-to-1 slope, but that 3-to-1 slope would have gone into a 50-foot buffer for the residential, abutting residential district, and it would have gone into the CO district. So we incorporated a retaining wall. So with the project, we also have a conditional use permit. So quick overview of what the project is. I can get into more details, or if the board would rather get into conditional use permit and some of the items on that, I can continue on with the CUP.
Anyone?
Did you consider using a retaining wall on the northwest corner? The way you did in the southwest?
The stormwater ponds, under the town's requirement, are required to have 3-to-1 side slopes. I've tried in the past to get waivers on that, and it did not receive support. So, yeah, and then we can't put walls over 3 feet in that setback without going for a variance.
Where is the old pond compared to where you've drawn the one? Is it exactly centered on the new one?
Actually, no, could you advance back to the first sheet, couple back, one more? Yeah, there you go. So the existing detention pond, if you look above this dig safe symbol, just a little bit up, there's some text calling out the outlet structure. So that's the location of the existing detention pond. So we're gonna be expanding that to the east and a little bit into the south, into the project. The other pond is, you'll see text, the dig safe symbol just to the right. There's another text and the arrow heads off the sheet. That's the location of the second detention pond.
Mike, could you spare Jason the pointer?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
The top button. Just hold
Top
it down.
button?
Yeah.
So there's the first detention pond, second detention pond's right here.
So you're not moving further into the buffer? Is that what you're telling us?
We are moving into the buffer on the first one. We're heading over this way a little bit. The other pond, we're not expanding. Can you go back to that other, I think it was sheet 5?
This one?
Next one, yeah. So you can see, yeah, we're expanding, the edge of the pond's about where the hand is, we're expanding that out this way.
That's the 1,100 plus square feet.
Yes.
That's the total?
No, no, that's the 5,574 square feet, but that includes the area that was previously disturbed. I didn't calculate what the previous disturbance was. We're gonna be reshaping the whole pond and, you know, cleaning it out. It's starting to overgrow a little bit.
You have the ability to move the building just a little bit to the, I guess, east or more or less east, and/or the underground stormwater system?
We are, if we go further to the east with the building, we have some parking that is then gonna start encroaching on. So we've got the wetland finger coming up here. You know, we've got that parking right beside it. So our fill is gonna start encroaching on that wetland. And they're looking to reserve this area up here. This sits up much higher than the rest of the site. They're looking to reserve some of that for potential smaller building later on. And if we move the detention system, that chamber system in the back of the building, if we move that closer, further to the east, we're actually gonna have to start, we're gonna be a certain distance above the water table, seasonal high. As we go towards the east, the grade raises. So we're gonna have to bring that whole pad higher, which is then going to create some longer slopes, which I don't know what the impact would be, if we would impact more buffer or not, but that whole thing would have to come up in elevation also as we go to the east.
That wouldn't necessarily be a problem though, right?
Well, unless, we slide that, I'm gonna guesstimate, maybe 50 feet. Scale by, yeah, if we came 50 feet, it's gonna rise up 2 feet, which then, we're chasing those grades around the entire, because that entire parking area is raised in the back. The truck, loading dock area.
Yeah, that sits over the stormwater treatment facility, right?
Yes, yeah.
That's not a concern?
No, we got proper cover on that H20 loading.
What's the thoughts on snow removal and where you're gonna put the snow as you plow it?
I'm not sure if they're gonna have a contractor do this or if they're doing that themselves. It would be moving it towards that detention pond on the north.
Thanks.
The entire parking area is curbed too, and we have closed drainage, so everything flows to the closed drainage and then to that chamber system, outflows from that chamber system into the detention pond on the north.
So what happens to the salt? Does it just dissolve and disappear, or is it still in
Well, it's
there?
not gonna disappear, it dissolves and it stays in stormwater, that's the problem with salt, but part, you can't get, once it's dissolved in the water, you can't get rid of it, Part of the operation maintenance plan for the Londonderry stormwater permit, the last few projects, they've required was a Green Snow Pro contractors. So I imagine by the time we get done with the review process with engineering, that will be a stipulation added to this approval.
Yeah, because this, I believe, feeds into Watts Brook, the wetlands that are surrounding this.
Yeah, I was curious, did you check to see whether this wetland, it's actually kind of a long complex, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Is it really just a 50-foot buffer, not a 100-foot buffer?
We're not, yeah, no, there's no named rivers right there, named brooks. It's all standard wetlands in a couple pockets less than a half acre and a couple fingers that are less than 50 foot wide.
I mean, the unfortunate thing here is you inherited a non-compliant situation, and now you're making it worse.
Well, I guess it depends on the way you look at it.
Well,
If we
it's-
could find a way to get the drainage to work, we got a 60,000 and no wetland setbacks if they want to put the money into a treatment system, but it's almost cost prohibitive.
About just making the facility somewhat smaller, so you have
No,
less
they
stormwater.
were looking for a minimum of 50, so they've gone with high bay. I just told them, we're not gonna get 50 approved on this site. And we went back and forth a bit, and then they understood, because they actually held off on this a little bit, and we went through the DEA site and was able to, what scared them off originally and slowed down the process on this was all the additional permitting and the wildlife impacts. And once we got through the DEA site, I was able to share a lot of that information with them in terms of what the permit process was and, you know, what the cost was, because if the New England cottontail rabbit, that comes in, Londonderry's got that agreement with Fish and Game on there's a fee that needs to be paid to New Hampshire Fish and Game. So it made a lot more of the items a little more clear for their budgetary purposes, so they decided to move forward. But they were looking for a much larger, you know, facility there. So this is on the small side for what they were looking at. You know, they bought the property with the original intention of it being able to have the 61 or 62,000 square foot.
Back in 2001.
Yeah. Yeah, 61,200 square feet. Because when it had that vesting. It had that vesting letter that was with it, but unfortunately, the state site-specific permit, that program no longer exists.
You're caught in a catch-22.
Want to talk about the CUP?
We can, yeah. So, the first item on the CUP, pretty much covered that 24,000 square foot warehouse, 13.7 acres of land, 2.6 acres of wetlands, and 4.2 acres in the CO district. Total buffer impact, we're looking at 6,874 square feet for the three areas, and that equates to about 3.4% of the total on-site buffer area. So, yes, there's 6,000, almost 7,000 square feet, but it is a very small portion of the site. Under item 2, design and construction, materials will be such to minimize impact upon the wetlands and will include restoration of the site consistent with the permitted use. So impact area 1 is 1,143 square feet of impact. For connection to the existing driveway, most of the impact area can be revegetated and allowed to go wild. So view it as a temporary impact. For the pavement portions, the grading and curbing will ensure that the runoff from the paved area will be directed to close drainage and go into the chamber system for treatment and into the detention pond after that for treatment. Impact area 2 is 5,547 square feet of disturbance to expand an existing stormwater pond. The proposed cut slope of the expansion of the existing pond is 3-to-1 slope by town regulation. The existing pond will be expanded to construct a pond that was previously approved in 2001. And that, again, the side slopes of that can be revegetated to help reestablish that buffer. Impact area 3 is 184 square feet of disturbance, and that will be at the toe of the slope. That will minimize the amount of impact that would be required if we went out with a 3-to-1 slope. And we do need to expand that corner out because the WB 62 or the full-size tractor trailers need to come in, and their nose needs to tuck down in by that retaining wall, then back up into the loading docks on the back north corner northwest corner of the building. So we needed to get that squared off as much as we could. Following construction and stabilization, the CO buffers can be placed and then help limit future impact in those areas, and vegetation can reestablish.
So how much is permanent then of that, with the revegetation?
I don't have that broken out as what's permanent. I would consider everything on the inside of that berm of the detention pond as permanent because it needs to be mowed, maintained. Large brush needs to be kept off that berm for, so you don't get tree blowovers and breaking the berm down, in the future. So the outside of the berm on the pond, obviously the toe of the retaining wall can revegetate. And then the area outside at that entrance where that radius is coming in, everything to the left of that radius coming in, that can all be allowed to revegetate. I don't know, rough guess, you'll probably be a third of it, maybe, revegetate. Just a rough guess. So, any feasible alternatives? The approved and vested site plan was for 61,200 square feet of warehouse. Proposed a greater impact to what is now today the CO district. Minor impacts required to construct a 24,000 square foot warehouse. And we've done the best we could to centrally locate that within the existing clearing. Little bit of tree removal around the perimeter, but we're not creating new field areas. We're just doing trimming around the perimeter for slopes and so forth. Economic advantage is not the sole reason for the proposed location of construction. The proposed layout is the most compact layout for this style project by reducing the total area of impact and limiting the area of impervious surfaces. Environmental impact will be minimized. Impact area 1 for that driveway radius. Connection, having that driveway to the south will allow that upper flat area to be used in the future for additional use, additional structure that will increase town's tax base in the future.
Would they have to do more to get a driveway access into that parcel?
No, the driveway runs right up.
But the buffer is right there in the back, and I can just imagine.
Well, they're gonna have to, if they do anything with that, they're gonna have to come in for another site plan, full site plan approval. We're not getting anything approved today, so they're gonna have to come back to Heritage and Conservation Planning Board. So if anything moves forward, they'll be back before you.
It seems like it is economic advantage to have the entrance encroach on the buffer to the south when looks like there's plenty of room to move it north, keep the same radius.
Well, yeah, but then you're pinching that buildable area. So, and that radius is all within the power line easement, which has easement for clear cutting.
But it's not paved.
Huh?
It's not paved.
Yeah, but that's why we have curbing there. All the pavement, all the paved area is directed by curbing to close drainage and is picked up and treated through, a treatment system. So if we go further to the north, we could go with no curbing and allow, and again, that's an uncurbed access way, secondary access way already, heading to the abutting property.
is it gravel now? What is it?
No, it's paved.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, it's paved. It heads right, connects right through to, there's a gate, just as you get to the north of, what's shown on the street, the sheet there. It kind of bends to the right and, heads to a gate, gated access to the back of that power plant. I'll hop on to impact area 2, proposes to expand that existing stormwater pond that was constructed prior to the CO district ordinance. The pond must be expanded to accommodate increased peak rate of runoff generated by development of the site. Underground stormwater chambers are proposed to handle much of the stormwater runoff, but in order to meet the groundwater recharge volume mandated by Alteration of Terrain Bureau, and maintain the foot of freeboard required by the town, the existing pond must be dug deeper. And to comply with the town's requirement, 3-to-1 side slopes on that pond. And, for those volume requirements, we need to expand that pond outwards. Impact Area 3, constructing the 3-to-1 slope would be the most economical method to permit tractor-trailer turning, but it would impact more of the CO district, so we're going to put in that retaining wall to limit the CO disturbance. Lot was created prior to the adoption of the CO ordinance. Original site plan permitted with 61,200 square feet of warehouse. We're going for 24,000 square feet. The current proposal is not an economic advantage, but necessary for the proper site development.
What, when you asked for, in some of your other projects, for going to a 2-to-1 slope, and they tell you no,
Yeah.
what is the reason? Is it compromising the function of the pond?
We design them in multiple other communities at 2-to-1 slope.
And you've never had a failure that you know of?
Not when proper construction, the time you have most of the problem is during construction and until it's stable. Once it's stable, 2-to-1 slopes can be stabilized very easily. It's a standard practice. I mean, heck, take a look in town here along, 93, new areas. We've got, you got areas that are probably 1.5-to-1 in some areas. 3-to-1 is the design requirement for Londonderry's site plan and subdivision regulations.
I would suggest,
Unless they're changed.
right.
Let's work on
Well,
it.
there's a new sheriff in town, we'll see. I think if the commission decides that they want to allow the 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag here, we ought to at least recommend that the planning board allow them to go to a 2-to-1 slope and that they use that change to reduce the amount of buffer impact due to the grading.
I have no problem with asking for that.
They always do exactly as we suggest.
Yeah.
I know.
Was there I might be confusing the two plans that we're looking at tonight, but was there an issue with a number of required parking that you were looking for?
Not on this site. We're way overparked on this site. This is not, they do not intend, because they already have a facility in town, and this is just for warehousing, they don't intend on this facility to be staffed 5 days a week. But because there's requirement for minimum parking, we have just the minimum requirement of 16 spaces. And part of the argument for that was if they ever sell it, it needs to have the proper amount of parking for a future tenant, should, the current owner sell the building.
How many spaces do you think you'll
They
need?
probably only need 4.
So if we were to support you in reducing the number of required spaces, would that allow you to,
If you did that, what I would probably propose is to eliminate those 8 spaces right there. To lose 4 spaces in the front of the building, I don't know. We could, but
It would-
time of construction, it's gonna be easier to just build them all at the time of initial construction. Later on, the other 8 spaces, they can go in and add that at a later date if they needed them.
oh, the 8 you're referring to aren't gonna help with the buffer anyway, right?
Right.
No. Well, that's why I placed them there. Really, I wanted to put the parking, where am I? Wrong button. I wanted to put the parking more over in this area, but because of the slope coming down the driveway and being, that would have caused slope and further impact towards the CO over on that side, so we tucked them in where we're showing them, and meets the parking requirement, minimum impact to the site.
Did I miss the overlay district signage on the plan?
We have it notated to be set, obviously in the locations of where they're grading, we'll have to get the work done, and then after the area's graded, final seed stabilization, go back in those few areas and put those CO district signs in. But yeah, they are shown, I believe, on sheet 4.
Any other comments? So if we just recommend the planning, allow the 2-to-1 slope on the detention pond to reduce impact on the conservation overlay district? We're good?
If it takes out the unnecessary parking, it's less impermeable surface.
Yeah?
I would support removing what seems like the extraneous parking, like it won't necessarily affect the buffer, but less impervious surface is better, and if they don't need it, as he mentioned,
Yeah.
it can always be added later without impact.
Okay,
That it?
good.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
So Delta Drive is up next. Why is this not moving?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Earl Blatchford from Hayner Swanson, also known as IMEG these days, as we've been acquired. Company's kind of been transitioning. We're still Hayner Swanson, but eventually we will be just known as IMEG.
Say again, please?
IMEG, I-M-E-G, it's just an acronym. Doesn't actually stand
Isn't
for
everything.
anything. So also with me tonight is Sean Smith, who's Vice President of Development for RJ Kelly, who is the owner of the property, as well as 2 properties across the street, which all 3 were owned by the Echo Shoe Company at one time. So they sold those properties to RJ Kelly. The ownership entity is 17 and 22 Delta Drive, but it's RJ Kelly. The site is 4.15 acres. It's zoned I-2 industrial. It's located on the north side of Delta Drive, about a half mile east of the intersection with Harvey Road. Site is predominantly wooded with fairly new growth. I think, as far as we know, there was cutting on the property. We assume at the time that the industrial subdivision was done. There is a gravel road that comes in. There's 2 curb cuts, and it basically loops around the property, somewhat similar to the layout of ours, just not quite as deep. But it basically comes off Delta Drive, one location, loops around the interior of the property, and comes back out on the east side. The topography is relatively, it's moderate for the most part, drops off a little bit in the back. There is a conservation easement, which was granted to the state of New Hampshire, which is it's triangular shaped. It's about 0.6 of an acre, and it's in the northeast corner of the property. Yes.
Is there a page for this plan, just for the computer info? It's hard to see.
You're on.
Yeah, you want to go to the next sheet, Mike, is the existing condition. So this is the existing
Don't do
conditions.
docs, do the plan. If you close out.
Oh.
Yeah. You go back to the thing that says materials.
It'll say Delta Drive Site Plan 202.
Double, there, plan set, yeah. I did the same thing in the first one.
Okay, is that displaying for you,
Yeah.
Deb?
I just
Okay.
haven't found it yet.
So this is on the screen now is the existing conditions plan. And as I was saying, there are wetlands about 17,000 square feet, or 0.4 of an acre, in the the back end, especially in the northeast corner of the property. That immediate northeast corner is kind of filled in, and then there's 2 kind of drainage features. One that goes to the easterly property line, and one that comes off the abutting lot from their drainage system, and it's just an isolated kind of drainage swale that has over time become jurisdictional, but it's limited, it's isolated, doesn't have any buffer associated with it. But the other wetlands do have a 50-foot buffer. The wetlands were, and the soils, Brendan Quigley from Gove Environmental did the wetland delineation, and Jim Gove did the high-intensity soils mapping for the property. And as you can see, there are several test pits that we did just as to get more information on the soils and to test for our stormwater design. There's roughly about 20,000 square feet of buffer area associated with those 2 buffers on the easterly portion in that back right corner. The Delta Drive has all the utilities, Manchester Water, municipal sewer, and power and communications all out in the street. There's also the sewer from Delta Drive flows in a northerly direction along just off the property on the east, and then it cuts across the back of the property a little bit upslope of where that conservation easement is, and then continues in a northwesterly direction off the property. So the plan, as you know, has been submitted to the planning board for design review. It's being reviewed by all the departments as well as the town's consulting engineer now, and we're awaiting comments. It's also been submitted to New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services for an alteration of terrain permit, as we're disturbing more than 100,000 square feet with the proposed development. We've also submitted for a review from Fish and Game, as there were some threatened and endangered species identified on the database. So we've followed that protocol and submitted that. This site is also, because of its proximity to the airport, it also comes under the agreement between the town of Londonderry and Fish and Game to basically pay an impact fee based on the area disturbed for mitigation purposes for any species that are affected. So that's kind of the existing property. Mike, you want to go to the next sheet? The site plan? Yeah, great, thanks. So the proposal is for a 60,000 square foot warehouse, which measures 200 wide by 300 deep. There are 2 curb cuts off Delta Drive for circulation around the building for tractor trailers and emergency vehicles, fire apparatus, and any vehicles. The circulation is two-way in all directions, but we assume that larger vehicles are going to come in the easterly or the right-hand driveway, circulate clockwise around the site. There are 2 depressed loading docks in the back, which are at a 30-degree angle. We did that to make that back area narrower, to allow us room for a detention basin. And then there's also a drive-in ramp on the back left corner or the northeast corner of the building. In the front, we have 19 proposed parking spaces for business that has 14 employees. And Mike, I think you probably were thinking of our plan.
Yeah.
We are asking for a waiver of parking. The regulation says that for a 60,000 square foot warehouse, you need 40 parking spaces. With 14 employees, we're providing 19 spaces. We think that's very reasonable. All of the utilities, sewer service, water, power, and communications are all coming to the front of the building from Delta Drive. There's also a second sewer service that comes out of the back of the building, and we're running it down and connecting into that, into the manhole that's on the sewer interceptor line in the back as well. So we met, last week we met with the Heritage Committee, and they've made a positive recommendation to the Planning Board for the proposal. The stormwater system that we're proposing is a closed stormwater system, so we have a series of catch basins, manholes, and underground pipe curbing around the entire site. And we're pre-treating the stormwater with deep sumps and gas hoods in both manholes and catch basins that are offline per DES AOT pre-treatment requirements. We do have a small detention infiltration system under the easterly or the right-hand driveway to meet the DES AOT requirements for water quality, volume, infiltration, groundwater. So our stormwater report has 2 versions. It's with the infiltration included for DES and with the infiltration excluded for the town's requirements. And then, so that system, and then the other branch is collected on the easterly side and in the back. All of the drainage from the roof area and from the front pavement and the driveways and the rear pavement all end up in the stormwater basin that's behind the building. And that is basically going to be it's an extended detention basin with a micro pool, so we do intercept the water table at the very bottom of it, near the outlet structure. So the water, the stormwater runoff gets further treatment. It's held back and metered out through the outlet control structure, and we discharge into the adjacent conservation easement area. We are allowed to do a limited amount of drainage construction in that easement area, and that's all we're proposing. And it's really just that outlet pipe and a little bit of swale work so that the grades work. So as part of the site plan application, we also do, and the reason we're before you tonight, have a conditional use permit for some disturbance to the Conservation Overlay District buffer area. There is no wetland disturbance. There is no jurisdiction wetland disturbance proposed, but we do have 6,100 square feet of buffer disturbance in two areas. That outlet, the smaller areas where the outlet is 750 square feet, and then the areas for the detention basin and one corner, a little corner of the driveway fire lane is a little bit involved there, but it's mostly for the easterly end of the detention basin, and that's 5,350 square feet of disturbance. As I said, we tried to keep that rear area as narrow as we could. We couldn't make the loading areas perpendicular to the building, or parallel, I should say, to the back face of the building, but we made them 30 degrees, and that allowed us to be able to pull out of there, to be able to maneuver in and out of those spaces and make that corner around the northwest corner of the building and back out to the front. It's, that way we were able to meet the town's requirements. We did have a little different design. We sat down with town staff, and Mr. Trottier pointed out a few things. One, that sewer easement is in, that sewer interceptor is in, it's a public sewer. It's in an easement, 30-foot easement. And we did have some retaining walls. We had more retaining walls than we show now. And that was problematic, having those in the easement area. So we adjusted the design, pulled any retaining walls outside of that easement area. And also the 3-to-1 slope requirement was stipulated, which is not only a requirement for the town, it's also a requirement for DES. So, we've been kind of having that discussion for years, and hasn't changed. So, the plan also includes the other normal landscape plans, site lighting plans, and all of the construction details that we have. The building's going to be similar to what was done at 5 Aviation Park Drive, which was one of the other projects we did for R.J. Kelly, where they're precast concrete panels. They bring them in on flatbeds, they raise them up, and the building goes up pretty fast. So that's kind of the overview of the project. I'd be very happy to answer any questions that anyone on the commission has.
The wetlands at the rear of this property is the Little Cohos Marsh, right?
Yes, the two, In the corner, it is contiguous with that system. And there's that finger that kind of comes over the easterly property line, extends up about 100 feet onto the property. Yes, that is contiguous with the Little Coos Brook and marsh system.
Would that require a 100-foot buffer?
No.
Seems like it should.
Seems like it should.
It's one of our named
Yeah.
stream, wetlands, named wetland and stream. I mean, depending on what's going on off the plan here, but if it's contiguous to the marsh, then that's a named wetland, which would give it a 100-foot buffer.
We can check into that a little deeper, but
Well, it'll make a huge difference.
Yeah, that's going to be a huge
your
bummer if
impact.
it is. I mean, bummer for you.
Is the width of the access way, is that driven mostly just by the turning radius of the trucks?
yes. Yeah, and it's the minimum width that the town allows, 24 feet.
If you made it one-way circulation, would that allow you to make it narrower?
I don't believe so. Sometimes we'll let you go to 20 feet for a fire, basically one-way or fire lane, but I don't think Londonderry does. I've never done a one-way circulation in Londonderry, but I still think it's the minimum width is 24 feet, whether it's one-way or two-way. And the width would be problematic on those back corners.
That's why I was asking about turning radius.
It seems with the angled loading docks, trucks are going to have to go one way.
Yes.
They can
Yeah,
only go
yeah, they have to,
counterclockwise.
they have to come in that easterly driveway or the right-hand driveway and circulate around, pull past where the spaces are, and they back in, and then they pull out.
And then
I mean,
continue around to get out.
Yeah, fire apparatus could actually go either way, but
Right.
circulation, I think, is a little easier going counterclockwise around the site.
Anything else?
I mean, this is kind of the same situation here. If this building was made just a little bit smaller, you could, pull everything out of the buffer. Right?
I don't know if we'd be able to pull out completely, but
Certainly improve the situation. I mean, it's, a lot here hinges on whether this is a 100-foot or 50-foot buffer.
yeah, we'll confer with Gove on that, and, because they flagged the limit of jurisdictional wetlands on the property, but I don't think they went into
Yeah, that's just on a computer where the buffer is. They go by the surveyed wetland stakes, right?
Yes. Yeah. So, exactly how this relates to that marsh system, I would defer to them to kind of look at that and,
So I think we should request from the planning board a note back as to what they find out, too. 'Cause
Mike, can you put the aerial up?
Approval without that
with
info?
the-
I don't think we should.
No, I think we need confirmation that not a 100-foot buffer.
just zoom in on that corner, and I want to see if they're interpreting it as a,
This one?
yeah, right. I mean, that light green, that's just aquatic vegetation, right?
I mean, you can see the path.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, Mike, if you slide it down just a little bit and to the left, yep, the other way. No, the
No.
other way, I'm sorry.
Up here?
Yeah, no, there you can see the path.
Yeah, what I was wondering is, did the wetland scientist assume that there was an isolated, less than 50-foot piece of this, and therefore he only use a 50-foot buffer, but it does not look that way.
Jim is very good, too. He's very recommended.
Yeah, but this is a,
We all make
I think this
mistakes.
is a draftsman issue more than it is a
okay.
wetland scientist issue. They put the stakes in the right place, but the question is then when you lay a buffer on when you connect those dots,
Which buffer
which
you-
buffer do you put on?
Yeah.
It's just a computer command.
We'll get to the bottom of it and report back.
So I mean, I'm not, personally, I'm not comfortable with the amount of buffer impact here, especially given that you could improve the situation by adjusting the building. On the other hand, there's no sense in our agonizing this until we figure out, what we're up against. So I would suggest that we, just invite you to come back after we've got this resolved and continue the discussion. Is that gonna screw up your time schedule?
I don't think, you're meeting every 2 weeks?
Yep.
Yeah. No, shouldn't be a problem.
No, I think it should be fine. Just wondering if we can bring the plan back up real quick. I'm wondering how much of that area in the corner. Because you have that man-made boulder line there as well for the other sewer interceptor line that comes through, and that's what the other swale is associated with on that easterly side. Are you able to zoom in at all, Mike, on this? See the man-made boulder line that came in when they put in the sewer, and you can see those two dashed lines that continue off to the top across the state of New Hampshire property, but, that little finger there that's associated with a good amount of that buffer zone seems to be associated with that little wetland finger that is associated with that area there, so. There may be something that Jim saw there that we can
Right.
look into.
Yeah, and that's, the 50-foot is really off that finger, not off the,
Yeah.
not off that
the contiguous
bigger,
part, which is on the other side of the boulders.
right, exactly.
Which is probably what he's looking at here. So we can have Jim look into this, but. I think looking at that too, you have a sewer line under the buffer zone, you have something that'll get restored there, so it's not exactly like it's never been touched either, but,
Yeah.
I think we have to figure out what we're looking at first, so.
Yeah, and with the exception of that little bit of pavement on the driveway,
Yeah.
the buffer disturbance is all vegetated slope, it's the side slopes of the detention area,
Which will restore over time, right?
which will restore, which will be revegetated.
You'll have to mow it, right?
No. No, it has to be, usually you go in, inspect it, quarterly, and usually gets, kind of mowed once a year.
Right.
Can't get overgrown,
Right, you can't have woody vegetation.
you can't have woody vegetation in there because it'll destabilize the slopes.
Right.
But for the most part, it's vegetated, isolated, and, you know, you just need to be able to inspect it and maintain it per our inspection and maintenance plan that's included with the submittal. So, just for best management practices.
Kind of leave it hanging until we,
Yeah, I think we have to.
There's a lot going on out there wetland-wise.
yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, this is one of the crown jewels in town, so we want to be very careful to do it right. The marsh.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why we've put in all the requirements for that the town requires and that the state requires for the stormwater management and keeping out of the wetlands, no wetland disturbance, but yeah, so when do you want to,
The second Tuesday of June, whatever that works out to be.
I don't think I have my calendar.
Something like that. I think it's like,
June 10th?
yeah.
My daughter's birthday.
We'll get Jim on the phone tomorrow. Get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, so.
yeah, so we will report back to you
All
with our
right.
findings on June 10th.
Thank you.
And if, I don't, you probably don't want to pay Jim to be here, but if he could just, write us up a little something that if it is only 50 feet, some little narrative to explain why.
How we determined that, yeah.
Right.
Right,
Okay,
thank you.
great. Thank you very much. See you on the 10th.
I'd ask for public comment, but there isn't anyone here, so I'm not concerned. Do we have anything anyone wants to bring up for old business?
Well, I can update the funding.
Okay,
We have our $750,000 is in our account now, giving us a total of, depending on which page I look at, $1,439, oh, wrong, 1,440, I can't do these. $1,440,477.67. She's saying numbers that big.
Of which none is obligated at this point?
not
No.
yet.
on my end of the deal. And I think they have a new system for parceling out the
Land use.
land use. It's just, it's there, some of it's there, some of it isn't there, and we'll figure it out on June 30th.
Mm. Do we have
Oh.
anything left in our line item budget?
Oh, yes, yes, quite a bit, actually. $1,934.66. But, and we caught up on the Ingersoll monitoring somewhere along the line. Last thing we bought was the handbooks. Do we owe anything out of our account for the dock?
No, that's done.
That's it, really, for me.
All right.
Just figured I'd like to know the numbers.
Well, speaking of the dock, I've actually heard positive things that people heard about it and have checked it out, and hopefully it's going to be used.
Good.
As soon as the water goes down a little. You have to wade through the water to get to the dock because all the rain kind of filled it in too much. But so far, so good. Any new business? Everything I have is I need to do in non-public, so if we want to review the minutes now, we can go into non-public.
We reviewed them a month ago. 2 months is a long time.
Right, we've had time to do it.
Was our last meeting canceled, by the way, which I don't object to, but
Yeah.
was it just because there was no business?
There was nothing,
Yeah.
like, these guys were,
They were both supposed to be in the last 2 meetings.
yeah, and they
And
keep
they just
delaying.
kept delaying.
Yeah, certainly approve of canceling if there's nothing that we need to do.
It worked for me too.
Nobody has anything, I'd move to accept the minutes as presented.
Seconded.
Okay, motion by Bob, second by Jean. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstain?
Abstain.
Susan has abstained. Motion passes. Okay. I would entertain a motion to go into non-public session per RSA 91A:3 2D for the purpose of discussing the acquisition of property.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second?
Motion by Jean, second by Deb. All in favor, needs to be a roll call vote.
I, Mike Speltz.
Hi, Bob Maxwell.
I, Susan Mallowan.
I, Gene Harrington.
I'm Marge Bedoy.
Hi, Deb Levens.
I, Elgil Bickford.
I, David Efi.
All right, going into non-public at,
Somebody was not supposed,
no, we are going to go in that little room.
somebody was not supposed to vote, right?
Yeah, Mike, but,
That's okay. But
okay, non-public at 8:42. And we're gonna go into the Sunnycrest room.
it is. Well, that was because we were all supposed to be in there.
All right,
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
okay, motion by Jean, second by David. All in favor?
Aye. Aye, 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 aye.
Okay.